What can Google do to help prevent suicide among veterans? We'll tell you about that and other help for returning warriors. Plus, my thoughts this Veterans Day on the un-American practice of killing the messenger. And we'll take you behind the day's political headlines. Ralston reports next.
And now, Ralston Reports with John Ralston.
Welcome to Ralston Reports. We'll bring in newsmakers and commentary you won't find anywhere else. Let's start with a look behind today's political headlines. The ride-sharing service Uber is looking for a few good men or women this Veterans Day holiday. The company says veterans can earn a living or augment their income as drivers for Uber. The company says it plans to hire 50,000 veterans during the next year and a half. Now, a cynic might say this is part of Uber's public relations campaign to curry favor with Nevada residents and elected officials. But who cares, so long as the company makes good on its promise. In an item announced Wednesday that we missed as the red wave washed over Nevada, former North Las Vegas city manager Tim Hacker has a new job. Hacker is the Parks and Recreation Director for the city of Las Vegas. He's been serving in the interim job since May. The city says Hacker was up against 80 applicants nationwide. Now, regular viewers of this program may remember a North Las Vegas woman sued then North Las Vegas city manager Hacker and his wife when they failed to pay rent on her home, which they claimed to be buying. Our exclusive report revealed the Hackers were secretly under contract to buy another home, and we reported the Hackers collected cash for keys money to move out. That's federal money designed to help people in foreclosure. I wonder why the city announced this the day after the election when they knew the media would be otherwise occupied. Yes, I wonder. The election's not even a week old and already a coup from Nevada Republicans. Sparks Assemblyman Ira Hansen is the speaker designate, chosen unanimously Friday by the caucus that was expected to pick Pat Hickey. Hansen's only been around in the legislature for 2 terms. He's known as an outspoken rabble-rouser, not afraid to play smash-mouth politics. Now, he'll put his foot in his mouth on occasion, but he's also a guy who'll play ball. Conservatives may love him, but he voted for the so-called sunset taxes 2 sessions in a row. That's $1.2 billion in taxes. One thing's for sure, Hansen will make great copy and be a more interesting speaker than any we've seen in a long, long time. The industry that helped kill the margin tax to fund education wants to help the campaign to build more schools in southern Nevada. Nevada Resort Association announced today it supports a measure that would allow school bonds to roll over automatically. Unlike the margin tax, the bond measure would cost the industry nothing. In the same news release, the NRA also said it supports increased education funding. How much? Who knows? Where would the money come from? Who knows? But specifics weren't the goal here for the gamers. They wanted to signal a baseline of what they will support next year in Carson City. But there's a long way to go until the session starts, and even longer until it ends. A Mormon bishop says U.S. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is not worthy to enter Mormon temples because he supports Democratic Party ideology. On his blog post, Good Riddance to Harry Reid, the Mormon Senate leader, Bishop Mark P.T.S D calls Reid, quote, an embarrassment and says Democrats' support of same-sex marriage, abortion rights, and gambling runs counter to the church. A church spokesman issued a statement criticizing the blog. This is something else, but also not all that surprising. Every time Reid runs, the church splits because so many members are so conservative. And Reid's re-election campaign began the day after last week's election. Nevada officials in the gaming industry are praising the president's announcement today on extending visas for Chinese workers and tourists. Senator Reid says he's worked for the change for years and says the move could help tourism in Nevada. American Gaming Association says Chinese tourists spend on average about $7,000 on trips abroad. Yes, this is good policy because the Chinese will gamble here and lose money and help our economy. Yes, all politics are local. And now, a word about what veterans have fought for every year. Every year about this time, I am humbled by thinking about the sacrifices of those who have fought for our country. Many of these men and women, whether or not they're physically injured, will never be the same. They experience travails and horrors most of us only see on TV or in the movies. Their courage, their patriotism, their selflessness can never be commended enough. So many true heroes, so many amazing stories. We also sometimes forget what exactly these men and women were over there fighting for. They are risking their lives for the ideals that made this country what it is, including, perhaps especially, the ability to question authority without fear of McCarthy-like attacks and smears. That's why the behavior of a veteran such as Adam Laxalt and his campaign team were so depressing and outrageous this cycle. We here at Ralston Reports were the only ones in the media to actually question the story the Laxalt campaign told about their man's time in Iraq. And for doing so, we were accused of attacking his service and that of anyone else who ever served. Let me be clear. We asked straightforward questions about Laxalt's service that were never answered. This came after we saw his original Nevada resume that said nothing about prosecuting terrorists. We researched where Laxalt was in Iraq and found no evidence he prosecuted or, in his words, put away anyone. He was at a huge detention facility that housed thousands of prisoners. Even one of Laxalt's superiors described Laxalt as a, quote, shadow prosecutor. Now, we respect that Laxalt and many others like him elected to serve in a very dangerous part of the world. It was a brave and, yes, patriotic thing to do. But what is neither brave nor patriotic on Mr. Laxalt's part is to attack the very ideals our brave veterans have fought to uphold. He might not like the questions we asked about his resume after his campaign told conflicting stories, but that's our job. A free press is one of the seminal tenets of this country. It's part of what all veterans, including the incoming Attorney General, fought for, what some have died for. It's a shame Adam Laxalt and his supporters forgot that during the campaign. But on Tuesday, we will honor him no less for his service as we do all others who risk their lives so we can do what we do here every day. When we come back, we'll talk to a couple of experts about the epidemic of suicides among veterans and more. But first, we want to hear from you. Head over to our Facebook page and answer our question of the day for this Monday. Or you can tweet your answer using the hashtag Ralston Reports. Here it is. What do you think the government should do to address the epidemic of suicides among veterans? And as we go to break, if you're a vet, if you are or you know a veteran suffering with suicidal thoughts, the Veterans Crisis Line offers confidential help to veterans and their families. You can call 1-800-273-8255 or visit veteranscrisisline.net. We'll be back in a moment.
And now, Ralston Reports.
Welcome back. It's the kind of statistic that takes your breath away on Veterans Day or any day of the year. More American servicemen and women are taking their own lives than die on the battlefield. Almost 1 an hour, 23 a day. Now, Google is lending a helping hand to a small Las Vegas organization working to prevent suicide. Matthew DeVell tried to kill himself by taking 3 bottles of sleeping pills and lived not only to tell about it, but to help others avoid taking their lives. And Ron Lawrence counsels veterans suffering post-traumatic stress disorder. Happy Veterans Day to both of you, and thanks for coming on the program. So let's talk about what you've been able to do with this program. I mean, you had these near-death experiences. You tried to kill yourself, and unlike most people, you've surmounted that, and you've tried to do something with it. Tell people what you've done.
Well, I've created a nonprofit called International Suicide Prevention. It's a very small organization, but we're doing very big things. We created 2 self-help procedures that anyone can go to our website online at supportisp.org.
Say it again so people hear it.
Supportisp.org.
Supportisp.org. Go ahead.
And it's International Suicide Prevention, so you can search either term. These procedures are online on our website that you can go to if you're depressed, have anxiety, P.T.S.D. or suicidal thoughts, and you can actually do the procedures. They're less than 5 minutes. One is in our suicide prevention guide booklet, and the other one is called 4-Phase. They work on the trauma you've experienced to get to the point where you're suicidal. Could be a loss of a child, could be you were molested, could be a number of different things. And that causes you to become emotionally compromised. And when you do become emotionally compromised, your world gets very small. So you have to go, it's not why are you feeling suicidal, it's how long have you been feeling suicidal. Once you know how long, you go back to that point and work on the trauma that happened. Could be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when you're in the military, whatever. You could have several traumas in the military, especially if you're on a battlefield, and you can work each individual memory with these procedures and have the emotion detached from those experiences.
Talk about the Google component of this too.
Oh, the Google, they've been wonderful for us. They've actually created an app, actually 3 apps, but the apps are called One Today, and you donate $1 a day. You can, I mean, a vet's worth $1, right? Each dollar goes to create one of these booklets to be sent to a veteran. And the other thing is that Google gave us in-kind gift of $10,000 per month for life to put us in the search engine so people who are suicidal can find us. That's amazing.
It really is. Let me ask you, does this kind of stuff work? I mean, this is out-of-the-box kind of stuff, is it not?
It does, and we're discovering that we need to do out-of-the-box things in order to help people. The latest cutting-edge literature on trauma tells us that cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what therapists have done for years, is not exactly the total answer to trauma recovery.
Why is that? What is it that's lacking in the traditional therapy?
Sure. There's a state of being, mental, physical, mind, body, called tonic immobility. And it's like we reach this certain phase where we get frozen in that trauma. And so we use functions like EMDR, basically eye movement desensitization reprogramming, where we actually reach the more primitive level of the brain where the trauma is stored. And so we're doing a lot of that at Community Counseling Center. And of course, there are things like trauma recovery exercises. There's another process called rapid trauma recovery, in which case someone has to be in a hypnotic state to experience it. But we're doing a lot of different things besides that talk therapy that are really helping.
And let me show something. One of the things that you've written a lot about this. You've written a book, Mr. Duval. You wrote that suicide is not a mental illness. Let me read this because I think it's pretty cogent. In order to reduce and/or eliminate suicidal thoughts, the individuals having these thoughts must be able to communicate with others that they are having them without the stigma associated with mental illness. Mostly the stigma that mental illness is not a temporary condition in some people. The fact is, having suicidal thoughts are part of the human experience, and anyone given the right situation and/or circumstance can have them. And I think that's certainly true, and I think a lot of people watching tonight. But here's the problem, I think. Sometimes it's not visible, right? You can't tell, and we'll hear from your colleague over here. I mean, some people could have very deep suicidal thoughts, not show them. Some people could have just minor suicidal thoughts, if there is such a thing, and maybe present more than somebody else. That's the difficulty here in treating this, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the other difficulty is that there's a stigma associated with mental illness. WHO labeled mental illness years ago, or suicidal thoughts, a mental illness. So when that happens, people think of Johnny with the axe beaten through the door. That's mental illness to a lot of people, and they're afraid of it. And they subconsciously react when you say, I'm suicidal. They think of murder-suicide. They think of, this is not normal. This is not normal behavior for you to be thinking this way.
It's crazy. Right?
Yes, it's crazy. That's the exact word.
That's the word they use.
So we actually created these 2 procedures that you can go online and do without stigma. That was the whole point of it.
We have to take a break, but real quickly, give us an example of what one of these procedures is so people understand what you're talking about.
Well, the 4-phase is the best one because it actually works on anyone, even 5-year-olds, because they get trauma just like we do. And what we do is we sit them down and say, okay, we want you to look at the trauma, and if you can't look at the trauma, then you need to seek another,
showing your website right now, just so people know.
Another source of mental health, like counseling or medication, something else. But if you can't look at the trauma, if you can look at it, then you go to 4-phase. And 4-phase is you take the trauma and you look at it and you change 4 aspects of that trauma with your imagination.
Don't people need help to do this though?
No,
Can they do it on their own?
you can do it online. It's very simple. I've created it extremely simple because when people are suicidal, their thought processes have slowed down. Because I know what this is, because I attempted suicide, so I know where you're at. So you get to a point where you have to be very simple, and that's what this is.
All right, I'm going to get your take on this. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk a lot more about this. We should let you know NBC News has created a free ebook for veterans on how to use their military experience to excel in the workplace. Please visit heroesgethired.com for more information. That's heroesgethired.com. We're back in a moment.
And now, Ralston Reports.
Welcome back. On Veterans Day Eve, we're talking about the terrible epidemic of veteran suicides, almost 1 an hour every day, much more than military men and women dying on the battlefield. We're talking to a couple of experts today. Mr. Lawrence, let me ask you a question based on what Mr. DeVell said. This whole issue of the stigma of suicidal thoughts and whether it's mental illness, I would think it's even more exacerbated with veterans, whether they're men or women. The environment they're coming out of, where you got to show toughness at all times. You've braved these terrible conditions. You're not going to want to show weakness.
That's correct. And basically what a lot of veterans feel is that they don't want to abandon the mission. And so there's even guilt that goes along with that stigma. But I want to go back to something that you said, because I think it's very important. In the whole field of crisis management, you said, that people go to this very deep place where they're silent, they don't talk about it. And in crisis management, there's this, I'm going to talk with my hands, there's an upside down bell-shaped curve. And the person gets to that lowest level where they're completely immobilized. And as soon as they start to breathe and come right up here, they've just passed the low point. That's when they're more likely to commit suicide, as soon as they get their energy back. And so we have to be very careful in therapy. That's the time we really need to stick with these folks. And, people will come into therapy and say, they're not going to be okay in a couple sessions. And as soon as they start to come up from that bell-shaped curve, from that low point, they'll say, oh, I'm okay. Don't believe it.
I would think the real danger, though, is that if I'm a veteran and I'm having these thoughts, or I'm feeling depressed after I've gotten back and I come to see you, that's one thing. What about the person who served with me, who is also having these thoughts but just won't come? I mean, do you have situations where veterans will say, I think you should see my friend, my person who served with me? Does that happen a lot? Because I would think there's too many who are sitting in their homes in denial about this.
It happens a lot. And the key, the ticket to getting to that other person, is the person that you're treating.
Right.
And, we're very happy once they see that they can come and they can sit in an office, they can talk about their experiences, they're not going to be stigmatized. Then they can go and explain to this other person, this isn't so bad. It's not going to be bad to come and talk to this person. So that patient in therapy is truly the ticket to get to the other person.
Do you experience this same kind of domino effect where you have one person talks about another person? I'm also wondering, from both of you gentlemen, when you have such a high-profile suicide, a celebrity such as Robin Williams, does that help in some perverse way with awareness? Does it bring people in saying, I don't want that to happen to me, or does it go the other way?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of I'm sorry that happened to them. Like Robin Williams is a perfect example. What happened with me was I felt guilty about it because I've been holding off on the 4 phase because I'm working on medical journals right now to get that into a medical journal. So I really wasn't focused on releasing that yet. So when that happened, I felt guilty, like, wow, this could have actually saved his life.
In other words, another part of your program, you hadn't put it up on the website yet.
Right.
And so did you rush it then onto the website?
I didn't rush it because it was done. The part I'm working on is explaining it.
Yeah.
But I know it works because I've used it for years over the phone with people that are calling me from around the world. People, I don't know where they're at. They're in New York. They could be in Africa. They could be in Australia calling me. So I have to be able to help them over the phone with a short period of time. I can't be sitting there having them call back every 5 minutes saying I'm still suicidal. What do I do? So I help them immediately over the phone. And I took that procedure and put it into 4 phase.
Does it work the similar way with you? I mean, are they see something like a Robin Williams? Does that bring you more patients?
Actually, it goes both ways. There are people, I've had people say to me, the same ones that had the same disorder that Robin Williams had, I would never do that to myself. I'm going to see this through. And yet I've also had people come in and say, I know exactly how he felt and why. So it's a question of when the red flag goes up for the therapist and when you have to be more attentive and really get into the process of what's going on in your mind about identifying with Robin Williams.
All right, gentlemen, Community Counseling Center of Nevada, and then give everyone your website again, Mr. DeVell, so they can go on.
Supportisp.org, or just search for International Suicide Prevention.
Gentlemen, happy Veterans Day to both of you. You're both doing great work. Thanks for coming on the program.
And one quick thing.
Yes.
Let's not forget the families.
Let's not forget the families. A good point, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
NBC created a website called Next Steps for Vets to help veterans find employment opportunities. Please visit veterans.nbcnews.com for more information. We'll be right back to get some of your feelings. Stick around. Welcome back. Right now, let's take a look at some of your responses to our question of the day for this Monday, Veterans Day Eve. Here it is. What do you think the government should do to address the epidemic of suicides among veterans? John Burke says, first, they should sell all VA hospitals to the private sector. Get rid of that system. They should give all military personal PPO insurance and allow them to go anywhere they want for medical treatment. They should approve payment for life recovery coaching that would give them a synergy that connects them with other behavioral health services and provide them with a guide to help set weekly goals and create a resource of communication daily. Now, there's someone who's really thought about this issue. Cindy Lake says, stop over-medicating them. Antidepressants cause suicidal and homicidal thoughts, found right on the warning label. Another thought heard from. Renee Cadlebeck says, increase people's understanding of high rates of suicide among vets in Nevada. Increase awareness of PTSD among the military and general public. Provide support to families of returning veterans to help with the transition. Help veterans with real-world transition issues. Education, housing, civilian jobs, etc. Fund mental health services properly. Make them immediately available to veterans. Increase participation in scope of Nevada Suicide Coalition and other such groups to assist in these efforts. Our usual thoughtful response from Renee. Thank you. Jillian St. Andre says, let's start by having fewer wars, therefore fewer veterans. Then it'll be easier to adequately fund their care. This is a pipe dream, of course. How about hiring more claims processors at the VA? And of course, it is eventually about money and bodies. Kristen Warren says, provide the medical support they need to recover. Counseling medications if needed. Hospitalizations if needed. We have to end the stigma associated with mental illness, mental trauma. The military stigmatizes the folks who reach out for help, so they don't reach out. Instead, they kill themselves out of hopelessness. We also need more mental health providers in the VA system to accommodate the high number of those suffering from PTSD. We do need a lot more mental health professionals in that system. Jacqueline Simon says, fix the VA. Stop slashing veterans' benefits, which is cutting off PTSD assistance. When it's diagnosed, don't cut Obamacare. Many are on it. Outreach to the homeless. All very, very good responses as usual tonight. Thanks so much to everyone for responding. And on the next Ralston Reports, the greening of Nevada is nigh. Will the Republican-controlled legislature snuff out hopes for recreational pot, or will they leave it to voters? We'll smoke out some answers on the next Ralston Reports. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a happy Veterans Day tomorrow. Thanks, as always, for watching.